Hello and welcome back to my first episode of 2026. In this episode I plan a lightning visit to North Wales to climb a mountain and hopefully photograph sunrise. So I'm currently walking down a little footpath down to what is my local waterfall. It's a couple of miles from home. I did talk about this a couple of weeks ago in one of my short episodes, but what I'm hoping is that today there'll be a little bit of ice. Now, that isn't going to be the topic of today's episode at all, and I'll explain a little bit more in just a second. The waterfall is coming up, I can hear some water flowing. What I'm hoping is there are going to be some fringes of ice along the edge. I've lost 3 hats this week. I've been searching. I've spent about 3/4 of an hour this morning hunting around my house and more lost time. And in doing so, I actually opened a cupboard I haven't looked in for over a year, and I found this one, my old Paramo beanie hat. So I've lost 3 and found one which has been missing actually for about 16 months since I had to clear my van out. But basically, if your mind is as disorganised as mine, I'm sure there've been occasions when you've probably arrived on location and found that you've got an SD card missing from your camera, or your batteries are flat, or all the settings on your camera are wrong, that kind of thing. So it's one of those really, really frustrating things, and I've had to become really, really organised, super organised really, to overcome this disorganised head I've got. So basically, this episode today isn't really about this location. This is Badger Dingle in Shropshire. I will show you this photo I've just taken in a minute though, because it's quite nice. But basically it's more about how I go about planning and executing, I guess, going to a new location. So about my kind of looking at the weather, looking at maps, looking at Google Earth and so on, all the different tools that I use when I go away to make new images. And the other thing I will do later on in this episode as well is I will come back and talk about really the things I now do at the end of every single day when I get home with my rucksack, to make sure that the camera and everything in my bag is good to go the next day and not trip me up somewhere out in the field. Okay, so the first place I always go when I'm planning visiting a location, especially ones I haven't been to before, is to map. Always a map. Now, as you can see from this, I'll show you on here, there's an awful lot of Snowdonia I've already covered and walked and hiked and so on in the past. And the location I'm planning on going to for this particular shoot, which is over here on Agarn, it's on the ridge running up to Agarn, is I have actually walked up that ridge. As you can see the line down to Llanidwal, where I've actually hiked down there in the past, but I've never actually been there as a photographer. I walked that many years ago when I was doing my mountain leader training at Placid Brenin, so I didn't have a camera with me. I just really started photography at that point, so I did a little bit of photography in the mornings, but most of the time we were out and about doing navigation training and so on. So I'm planning really, I always have 3 places in mind. On this occasion, depending on where the light is when I arrive in the valley, my first choice is to be climbing this ridge and then be making an image down this valley here. The sun's going to be rising over here, coming in from this direction, and it should strike all the hills on this side of the valley if it rises okay. And then if that location isn't going to work, I've got another idea here, which is basically to climb up from the road. Let's have a quick look. Where am I? I've lost myself at the moment. Yeah, just here. Again, another track I've walked in the past. I plan on walking up here, and then just where there's a stile over the wall, a ladder stile over the wall, I'll probably walk out along the side here and photograph Snowdon Horseshoe across this little clyn here. That's the idea. So just kind of photograph across this lake, but that will require some really good light. So if there's no good light, that's definitely not a. That would be my number 2 choice. And then the other one, which is just off the map over at Capel Curig, is the hill at the back of Chabot Cafe. All the way up there are lots of little bunches of rocks and pinnacles and things, which would also serve to make a good image into the light at sunrise, or across the light looking down towards Snowdon and the Snowdon Horseshoe again. But my first choice here is in the Ogwen Valley itself, and that's what I'm actually going to be going to shoot. Okay, so probably one of my favourite apps of all time has to be Google Earth. I love just exploring on here anyway, but I've centred this over the area in question. That's Snowdonia, pretty much the whole of Snowdonia in that view. If I zoom right in, there is Llyn Idwal, there is Llyn Ogwen, and I'm going to be climbing this ridge over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to centre it over there and just get it fairly centred. And it's just such a brilliant tool for getting those ideas of the kind of the 3-dimensional view that you're going to get when you're actually on location. So that's pretty much the view I'm hoping for down the valley from my ridge line. And what I'm really hoping to do is probably go about as high as these little lakes that are halfway up. So probably somewhere on this line here, with a view down the valley for sunrise. And my next app, just to get an idea of what the light might do over that view, is this one here. Now what I've done is, because it's such a clunky app on my particular iPad, my iPad's 9 or 10 years old now, so it may well be that the updated version of this app, this is Photographer's Ephemeris 3D, and I think it's obviously fairly power hungry, so it means that my iPad is particularly clunky. You can see it's hardly moving anything around. Should be zooming out now, but it's not working. So, but I have done a little screen recording. So what it does show you is the same view off of that ridge line, and I'm looking at the 5 to 10 to 15 minutes around sunrise just to see how the light is likely to play down that valley. If the sun comes out, then I would expect the whole left-hand side of the Ogwen Valley to light up. The right-hand side will be in shade, but there'll be some beautiful red first light all the way down the side of one side of the image. If it doesn't, we'll just wait and see what happens. And the last thing I check is always the weather. It's the one thing that you can't predict until really 24 hours out. So it's the last thing I go to. And what I do is I triangulate my locations. On here you'll see that I'm looking at Llanberis, but I'm also looking at Bethesda, and I'm looking at Capel Curig. It gives me an idea of what the weather's doing around my location, not just literally at it. I also double check this across different platforms. So this is the BBC app, but I also check Met Office itself. And my final port, of course, especially with mountains, is to go to the Mountain Weather Information Service site, and I'll often download the sheet for the day I'm going and have that in my pocket just to give me an idea of what I'm expecting to see. It's a very accurate way of seeing the weather as it is in the valley floor and also up on the tops. So with an alarm clock set for 4 a.m. and with 100 miles to drive, let's see how I got on. Good morning, it's 7 a.m. and I'm currently parked up alongside Llyn in North Wales, getting ready basically for an hour's haul up a garn, and I'm hoping, if all my plans have come together, that I'll be able to photograph sunset looking down the Ogwen Valley back towards Aperture. We'll see how it goes. There's quite a thick blanket of cloud, I think, over the Carnarvon at the moment. The forecast was for the western hills to be clear and the eastern hills to have cloud, but I don't know whether the Carnarvon counts as eastern or northern, really. I think there's an eastern and a western side of the Carnarvon, but we'll see as we get going. I'm going to get my boots on and plod my way up, hopefully at least 1,000 feet before the light starts to get good. Okay, so I'm about halfway up the ridge on the Garn, and below me that's Llyn Ogwen, and then down here Llyn Idwal. Now I found myself a really nice foreground here, as I kind of expected. The light to the east didn't really happen. It was forecast on the Mountain Weather Information Service to be thick cloud over the Carnarvon, and as you can see, that's Penrhyn there. That's beautiful, actually. I've made a few images looking this way because there was a fantastic colour out over Anglesey, so I've managed to capture a couple of images down the valley before making this little bit of B-roll here. But what I've got set up here at the moment is a view. If I put this right in front of my camera, this rather nice rock, the two lakes below, Trevan just disappearing into the cloud there, and then obviously behind it, and that's not going to be in the shot over that way. That's where the sun is right now. The sun's going to be, if it does appear over the hill, will come over there. I've got a feeling today, being the 28th of December, probably not going to see the sun coming over that hill. What I'm currently doing, everything fits in camera at the moment, and there's my composition. But what I am going to do is I'm going to put in a second filter. It's what I often do. I've got a 2-stop hard grad just holding the sky, but what I want to do is I want to bring the levels of the mountains down very slightly. So I'm putting a soft, well, this is actually a 2-stop medium grad, and I'm just going to feather this medium grad into the top of the frame. So this is going to slide down very gently. I've got to be careful with this filter holder because it's a bit dodgy, and you'll see that just come into the frame. Just knocks that top of the frame back a bit more for me. Really helps to add light into the foreground rather than, so it's not about darkening the sky anymore, it's about pumping a bit more light into the foreground. So there's the image back on the back of the screen again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait on this image now a little while and see if we get any colour in the clouds above the mountain. There are hints of cream up there at the moment. One of my favourite things is when you get that blue and cream mix with the sun low in the sky. I'll be back in a while. basically the conditions that I'd really hoped for didn't materialise, but I have found, I think this is a really worthwhile piece of foreground. I'll keep this one in mind for a future visit, because I think it points very, very nicely down the valley. Actually, it's almost like a huge kind of hand and finger pointing down the valley, so that's quite a nice piece of foreground rock. I was intending to carry on up steeply up here, and there are a few more jagged slate blades higher up, but actually the higher I'm getting, the windier it's getting, the harder it is to kind of manage the camera. So what I'll probably do is head back down now and go and find some shelter. I rather fancy a little wander down by the falls at the bottom there. I have to have an appointment at 1 o'clock in Capel to get to, so I've got about 4 hours now where I can potter around. The lower down, the more calm it gets, and there's absolutely no way here I'll be able to fly the drone. I'd love to, but I don't think I want to risk losing it down the valley and out into the sea. Penyrolwyn's looking absolutely fantastic. Again, just as a reminder, my imaging camera. Plenty of colour here. It's hard to believe really it's the 28th of December, because it's down in the valley floor it was +5 degrees. Wind chill here is pretty grim. But for the end of December it's rather mild. Not a speck of snow to be seen anywhere. Although apparently yesterday on the Carnelli there was quite a bit. Just reached the freezing point. I'm almost back down to the valley floor now. The wind down here is much, much lighter, and I was basically about, 20 metres off the path. I noticed this rock here, some lovely quartzite kind of striping going through it. So I've tried to set this up in a view with Trevan in the background and a little bit of each of the two lakes. Again, looking in the back of the camera, get an idea of how the composition works. What I've done here as well, you'll see again the 2 grad thing. I've got a 2-stop hard neutral density grad just down into the top of the mountain, to the sky. And I've got another soft or medium 2-stop grad which goes right down to above the foreground rock. And that's just to really get the light and out of the shadow detail at the very front of my picture. I've also taken 2 exposures as to focus stack. So I've focused F11, the boulder in the foreground and the mountain in the background, and I will be blending those 2 later. But there's your view. So a bit of a mixed bag from this visit, but it was a worthwhile trip, and as you'll see at the end, there was actually a keeper from all the images that I captured. I mentioned at the start of the video my checklist to avoid delays, disappointment and frustration when I'm out photographing. So in the evening I always reset my camera to ISO 100, f11, 2-second timer on the shutter, daylight white balance. The big one for me now is vibration reduction off on all the lenses, because from time to time now I actually do hand hold things, but I've been forgetting to turn vibration reduction off, so that's a bit of a killer if you're not careful. The other ones are fresh battery and obviously a spare, and having offloaded all my images, reformatted SD cards. I'm going to put the full list in the description below, and it will be really quite interesting to hear from any of you as to what you might do routine-wise at the end of the day or before you head out with your camera. Many thanks again for watching. Please don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons, which will really help me on my way. Thank you.